into the Republican Party, but in particular supporting Donald Trump. Remember, there were some social conservatives who thought he was too outlandish and too boorish for them to accept. But bringing on a more conservative Supreme Court really brought them firmly into his corner.
And it indicates just the sweeping power that Donald Trump has. It's not just that he has control of the White House, the House of Representatives and the Senate, but of course there is, as you point out there, a conservative majority on the Supreme Court. Leaderless Democratic Party, demoralized, dismayed. This time 8 years ago, there was a massive rally of protest on the National Mall around the White House. No such protest now. So this is kind of an apex predator, if you like, at the very top of his game as he's sworn in.
And that's the language they're using.
Well, it's so funny because yesterday there was a video meme put out by Trump's social media director which showed a lion on the African savannah surrounded by jackals and hyenas. So this is absolutely what Trump world wants to put out there. This is a man at the apex of his political power.
His name is Dan Scavino, who does the president's social media, or the president-elect's social media at this point, and he does an incredible job.
Did you see that meme?
Brilliant. I did not, but it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, it was a lion on the savannah. That's the image they want to put out there.
This White House or White Office, as I incorrectly called it earlier, will be many things, but subtle may not be, maybe not one of them, whether you're a fan or not. Now, as well as Heather and Robert, here we also have ITV News correspondents in key places in the US and indeed across the world, all ready to bring us their analysis on what President Trump says he'll do and what he'll actually do and what difference there might be between the two. Now, because of the freezing conditions, and just so you know, the studio may look like it's inside when it's actually not, hence why we've got big coats and heaters. Thousands of Americans have gathered here in the Capitol to see for themselves, and Romilly is with some of them. Romilly, what are they hoping for?
Well, Tom, I've been meeting people who've come from as far afield as California, Indiana, Alabama. A lot of them were hoping to get to the National Mall, had tickets for that. 200,000 tickets were given out for people to see, to stand outside and see the inauguration. That's now not going to happen. A lot of people have been queuing since the early hours to get into the Capital One arena, which is just up there, but that only seats 20,000 people. So others have come to places like this. This is a bit of a DC institution, this restaurant, cut out of Donald Trump here. It seats 600,000 people, 600 people, sorry. There are big screens erected here so that people can watch. There have been cheers every time the soon-to-be president appears on screen. And I want to come over here and talk to Elaine and Stephen, if I can make my way over to the bar, because you have come from a long way to see this moment.
I've come from Montana.
And why was it important for you to be here today?
To celebrate with my fellow Americans the greatest president of my lifetime.
And what do you want to see Donald Trump do as president?
I'm a former Marine, a veteran. I want to see a strong leader. A strong America will make the world a safer place. But first, we need to focus on the American people to make us strong and healthy, and then we can help everyone else around us be a safer and better place.
And do you think you can do that?
Yes, I believe we've got the support. We've got Congress, and I think we've got the American people have spoken. I think we're going to make a lot of changes, a lot of good changes. America first.
Well, thank you very much for talking to me. That is the view from in here, from Carmine's in Washington, D.C. It's not a view shared across America, of course, but there is going to be jubilation in here when Donald J. Trump is sworn in.
Okay, Romilly, with a very effusive and very noisy, or perhaps it's noisy here, but there's clearly hard to hear what's going on inside the rotunda. They are absolutely packed. We've just seen the Trump family, or perhaps clan, arrive. Might be a more accurate way of describing it. I imagine the camera will soon rest on them once they've taken their seats. Heather, I mean, you've been keen to get in with various things.
Yeah, I wanted to point out some of the folks in the audience. We're not seeing them right now, so when we come back to it, I'll talk you through who some of the people are. But imagine this. This ceremony was supposed to take place on the west front of the U.S. Capitol, which overlooks the National Mall and the Washington Memorial. but because of the weather, of course, brought inside. So now they're in the Capitol Rotunda, which is the largest room right underneath the dome. And imagine what the protocol people have been going through over the past few days. Once it was announced that this was going to be brought inside, they had to axe a bunch of people from being in this spot. So this is exactly where you want to be. It's where the key players are. Notice you don't see spouses here, except unless you're Jeff Bezos. He has his girlfriend right there, which I noticed. But for the other cabinet members and that group that you're seeing right there between those two statues, many of those are the cabinet member designates.
I mean, we were earlier we were saying, and we're just beginning to close in. I picked out Robert Kennedy Jr. at the back on his phone earlier, and we could probably just about see him. I saw Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary. You used to present, well, let's talk through. This is Lara Trump, of course, herself, wife of Eric, but a key figure in the
Republican Party. She really is. She's originally from North Carolina. President Trump put her in as co-chair of the Republican National Committee, which is the big arm that really oversees Republicans and money that goes to different congressional committees and races all across the United States. A very powerful position for her to be in, very influential. It was not without criticism, but she's done, from all estimations, a good job so far. So there you see Lara right there. And then, of course, next to her is Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State designate. He just did went through his confirmation hearing earlier, late last week. Expected that he will be confirmed today. So very important role. And then, of course, you see Jared Kushner next to Lauren Sanchez, the former helicopter reporter from Los Angeles, and who is Bezos' girlfriend.
Bezos' girlfriend. Yeah. But look, this is intriguing. This is the tech titans who came to kiss the ring, Robert, right at the heart of it. Not seated at the back, right there at the heart of the clan, right?
So they are ahead of the Secretary of Defense, or the designate Pete Hegseth.
Because this is Donald Trump understanding where power lies in, 2025 America. It lies with these tech titans. And what's remarkable, you might expect Elon Musk to be there, of course, and Jeff Bezos, but also, so is Zuckerberg from Meta. So, some of those who once had sort of more liberal, left-leaning principles have also kissed the ring and have deferred to the great presidential power that is now going to flow through the West Wing.
Here's a man with many things on his mind today, Mike Pence, no fan of Donald Trump.
Yes, well, they did have some brief remarks when they were recently together at the funeral of our former president, Jimmy Carter, here in Washington, D.C. And that was, in fact, the first time that Vice President Pence spoke with President Trump since January the 6th, or in the days following January 6th. I want to point out to your viewers here, you see the lady in the white jacket, that is Susie Wiles, a key figure in the Trump presidency, not only on his campaign, but is his chief of staff. The first female to have done so.
Also, somebody who's worked with Donald Trump for 3 years, and you can't say that about that many people, certainly not in his last administration.
Very true.
And here we have talking of, Mike Pence clearly had a lot on his mind, one would imagine, given the things he said about Donald Trump. But here we have some other people with perhaps many complex feelings today, the Clintons, Robert.
Well, certainly that. I mean, Hillary Clinton there with the smile on her face, but what must she be thinking at this moment? Bill Clinton, the master of a crowd, so he could be at home anywhere, including in this Trump world as well. So yes, handshakes and smiles from the Clintons. They're masters of their craft, but what must they be thinking? And of course, we saw earlier some pictures of Trump and Biden in the limousine, in the Beast, and what must they have been talking about in that few-minute ride up Pennsylvania Avenue?
Talk about places you'd love to be in a fly on the wall. I saw the Clintons shaking hands with Susie Wiles there. I mean, Washington's a small place. Do they know each other, do you think? I mean, does everyone know everyone?
Well, Susie Wiles has been in Florida, so I'm not sure they would have had the opportunity to meet. And then, of course, is former President George W. Bush, along with First Lady Laura Bush, who's really beloved in the Republican Party. Although there's been a big split between the MAGA group and the more traditional, what I had called country club Republicans of the past that George Bush is seen as, but really a beloved figure, and she was seen as a great First Lady.
We always see the Clinton, Bill Clinton and George W. Bush and Barack Obama gossiping really, apparently happily on occasions like this. They seem to get on. Presumably that's not fake?
No, it's the most elite club in the world. How many people have been presidents of the United States? And only they can share that bond and that unique perspective and experience. I also know that they, from time to time, will whisper in one another's ear about national security matters. So that always brings them together, too.
Barack H. Obama.
Barack Obama on his own, Robert, notably.
That's
No
right.
Michelle.
No Michelle. Michelle is currently in Hawaii at their house there. Notable too that Michelle didn't make it to the National Cathedral in Washington for Jimmy Carter's funeral, so she's cutting a somewhat isolated figure. Some people being critical of whether she's, respecting the protocols of the former First Lady position. Well, is it surprising to you that Michelle's not here?
She should be here. I'll put it that way. Not necessarily surprising, but when she did decline to show up for the funeral of a former president, a president that is in her own party, that surprised me, and that's telling.
Of course, she's the former First Lady who famously said, "When they go low, we all go high." So she is, in Hawaii at the moment.
Yeah, right.
Of the Supreme Court.
And the justices coming in here. I mean, Tom, for me, we can't look at these pictures underneath the great dome of the Capitol, the Rotunda as it's known, without recalling that 4 years ago, this is exactly the location where Donald Trump's supporters rioted.
Well, you were in there with them.
Yeah, I was there, so I can say rioted
free.
with some conviction because I watched them. Not all of them were rioters. Some were just sort of swept in on the moment, but definitely there were some bad actors in that underneath the dome in the Rotunda when I was there. They jostled and fought with police before being expelled. So, there is just so much irony in some of the locations we're talking about. Where Donald Trump went to church this morning was just next to Lafayette Square, which was at the peak of the Black Lives Matter movement, where there was also fighting between those activists and police. So everywhere we're seeing the ceremony and the pageantry of today. 8 years ago, there was a lot of turmoil.
Well, we expect later today to be a news tsunami, as we might put it, don't we, with many, perhaps as many as 100 executive orders signed. I mean, do we expect him to pardon all of the January the 6th rioters?
The president-elect has been very clear that they will look at those on a case-by-case basis. And so often people will say, oh, they'll pardon all of them, and I don't think that will be the case.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in touch with some of them, some of whom are still behind bars. They're all hopeful. They're certainly watching their television sets at this moment, hoping that the very first executive order he signs after being sworn in is to pardon, or at least commute the sentences of those who didn't commit sort of violent acts that day. I've got somebody I know who's in a federal prison in West Virginia, watching closely, believing that he will walk free in a matter of hours.
Well, there's a hush now as we are building up, of course, to the president-elect coming out.
We have Doug Emhoff there, the first gentleman, and of course the First Lady.
Jill Biden.
Yeah.
Tough day for the Bidens, it has to be said. But, they're going through the norms. Do you think Donald Trump regrets not going through the norms
Tiffany
last
Trump
time?
and Barron Trump.
I don't know the answer to that. I don't. Probably not, guessing his personality and all that was going on at that time.
I know this is an obvious point, but the contrast, obviously, with Barron Trump, who was really a young boy last time and is very clearly a young man now, and somebody who, we're told in the election his father lent quite heavily on. We're seeing the whole Trump clan there. Now, pretty much all of them, apart from Ivanka, Donald Trump Jr. there with the beard on the right of frame, we were talking earlier, his former girlfriend, Kimberly Guilfoyle, is now the ambassador to Greece.
I mean, they're set to be the ambassador to Greece, has to go through a Senate confirmation process,
okay.
but a really, truly wonderful posting, and she's very fortunate to have been named to that position, especially after he found a new girlfriend.
Yes.
So good place to put her, and I have no doubt she will do very, very well there.
But he has kept all his family close, involved. They clearly all have a lot of influence. We've never really seen that before, have we? Or do you think we have?
That's a great point. I hadn't thought about that. But truly, I mean, if you think about George Bush and his daughters, they were much younger when he was president of the United States. Same with President Obama. His daughters were younger. And so this is really the first time that I can think of in recent
we
history
all remember
where they've all been, full-fledged adults.
Right. I mean, like Amy Carter obviously was a young girl in the White House, went on to have a very sort of low-profile life after that in Georgia. So, yes, I mean, this is an extraordinary feature of the Trump White House, that the inner circle is also the the inner family.
And one thing to note about Melania and her son, Baron, not only do they have an incredible bond together, and he speaks her native tongue language, Slovenian, but he was really kept out of the public eye during the first Trump administration, growing up here, and now he's in college. He's at New York University as a freshman there in his first year, and will be coming back and forth between Washington, New York, and Palm Beach. And interestingly, he played a bit of a role in his father's campaign this time, where he was really advising his dad on the use of social media. Now, you may think, well, Trump's a master at social media. Why does he need any help? But Barron played the role of helping to recommend certain podcasters, such as Joe Rogan, who is incredibly popular here in the United States, 11 million followers with his show. And that, many believe, that was really an item that helped put the president over the top.
Well, as we wait for the arrival of the president-elect, let's maybe just take a pause here and take in some of the atmosphere and listen to the music for a second or two.
Ladies and gentlemen, escorting Dr. Biden and Mr. Emhoff, the Republican staff director of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, Ms. Emily Leviner, the Senate Secretary for the Minority, the Honorable Gary Myrick, the House of Representatives Chief Administrative Officer, the Honorable Catherine Spindor, and Mr. Bruce Fisher. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Jill Biden and Mr. Douglas Emhoff.
We were talking about what might have gone on in the cars on the way here, but I have to say, if you think conversation might have been a little sticky between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, what about with J.D. Vance and Kamala Harris, who really don't like each other,
I think
do
that
they?
must have been quite uncomfortable to be in such close quarters together. Although I'm sure that his wife, Aisha, had a nice conversation with them.
I mean, we talked earlier. It's always intriguing to see the former presidents and how they appear to get on. And I saw at Jimmy Carter's funeral, Barack Obama and Donald Trump gossiping for quite a long time, and there were various attempts by lip readers to try and work out what they said, which was a little
so silly.
It was a little hit and miss, if you ask me. But anyway, it was kind of intriguing to see them kind of getting along and joshing and all the rest of it. But with Donald Trump and Joe Biden, and indeed the outgoing vice president and the incoming vice president, you sense things are a little trickier, Robert. I mean, there is literally zero personal chemistry there whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, what you have to remember is that the Democrats ran a campaign in up to November, which framed Donald Trump as an existential threat to the American Republic. They termed him a fascist. So you look at all this kind of glorious pageantry here, and yet if they're being consistent now, they're seeing him as a major threat and as somebody who has fascist tendencies. So, I mean, you have to look at it through that prism when you see the smiles and the handshakes and think about what the conversation must be in that, inside the beast as they go up Pennsylvania Avenue. I mean, it's kind of an absurd kind of juxtaposition, how they positioned themselves in the run-up to the election and all the courtesies and civility we're seeing now.
Okay, let's just take another... Sorry, Heather.
I was just going to say, if you recall Jimmy Carter's funeral, too, seeing Harris look back at Obama and Trump talking and kind of giggling with one another, and her death stare that she gave them. Now, I'm not sure if it was to the two of them or aimed at the former President Obama, but that was something noticeable.
Okay, let's just take another brief pause to take in a bit of the atmosphere. Before we do, just one thing I keep meaning to mention, that we have clearly Keir Starmer, our Prime Minister, is not here and wasn't invited as we understand it. We did see, at least we thought we saw, the back of Boris Johnson's head going into the Capitol building this morning. We haven't seen him inside the Rotunda, nor have we seen Nigel Farage, and we haven't seen Liz Truss, there was much speculation about whether she was going to be here, but we did think we saw Boris Johnson, so that's pretty awkward for Keir Starmer. There's speculation his ambassador, Peter Mandelson, might not be accepted by the Americans, which would be embarrassing, and we'll perhaps catch up with that later, and I'm certainly going to ask Heather about that. But in the meantime, let's just take in a little bit more of the atmosphere here. Well, there we have, just at the end of that shot, Baron Trump right next to Elon Musk. Now we're looking at Joe Biden. I've just been asked to mention the fact that it's very windy here, if it's a little bit noisy on the mic, so I apologise about that. The team have done a brilliant job here, I have to say. Shout out to them. We may be on the outside, but we're actually relatively toasty warm, and it's relatively peaceful in here, so thanks to the team for all the work that went into that, but it is a bit windy, and that's the noise you're hearing.
Yeah, we're in a rooftop position here, overlooking the Capitol, so that wind is catching the canopy. But as you look at this,
that's Pam Bondi in the back there, isn't it?
In the
on the
checkered
left, on the check tweed thing.
blazer, the blonde, yes.
Obviously a key character. Yes, sorry.
Let me point out the gentleman, though. You can see your far left of your screen. That is Steve Witkoff. He's the president's envoy handling Middle East affairs. He was a part of that key negotiation that helped spring some of the hostages from Hamas.
Elon Musk here, but we also just saw Tim Cook of Apple. We're hearing reports that Apple may be about to announce a sort of multi-billion-dollar investment in some US manufacturing. Another victory for Trump in terms of America first.
Well, we got right in the center of frame there is Eric Trump. His wife Laura, we were talking about a growing and key figure in the Republican movement. Tiffany Trump next to her. All the Trumps there. Heather, do the Trump kids really get on? I mean, they give the impression that they do, but like all families are complex.
All families certainly are complex. They do get along. I've spent a good amount of time around Ivanka in particular, less time around her brothers, but they care and love for one another. But one thing that really brings them together is their love and support for their father. If you think about it, Ivanka and her husband Jared left really everything behind in New York to come serve in Washington, which is a really dicey decision to make. And they were received negative headlines all throughout, though from my experience with them, they were excellent, truly excellent at their jobs that they did for the president in the White House. But good relationship overall among all of them. And the president loves his kids. He is so proud of them, and all of them went to top U.S. colleges, from UPenn, Ivy League, to Georgetown here in Washington.
Is Ivanka's made very clear she's going to have no part in Trump 2. Is that, honestly speaking, because she didn't really like the politics and she didn't really like the criticism and the grief she was getting, or because she didn't really like working for her dad and found it too tricky? I mean, there'd be nothing wrong with that.
I think the first, certainly. Okay. I did it with children about the same age as Ivanka's, and it's very hard to focus on these jobs, to constantly be traveling around the world, working in the White House, and your children, your family, frankly, suffer. That's why we call it sacrifice. I always thought of sacrifice as in a military sense, but really taking some of these higher profile government jobs is a sacrifice. Your family can be hurt, and I completely understand why this time she's choosing to focus on her family.
So we think the vice presidents are almost on their way any seconds. Let's just have a look and try and look at, there's Melania Trump.
There's Melania Trump being escorted by a U.S. Marine, part of our Navy, subset of our Navy. And there's Vice President Vance's wife.
So Melania Trump, I mean, she truthfully played very little part in the campaign, played very little part in the White House. last time. I mean, one can understand it's tremendously difficult, being a First Lady, isn't it? It's a very tricky job to pull off. I think we all recognise that. But we don't expect her to be any more and possibly even less involved this time around, or you think differently?
I think the question is, how much does Donald Trump really need his wife by his side? He's such a forceful character and managed to win such a decisive mandate in this election. Not to downplay the important role of the First Lady, because that is a very crucial role. Americans want to see their First Lady, but she's also been there, done that, right? And so I think we'll see her spending time between Palm Beach, New York, and also Washington. But she has said in recent interviews that she intends to play the role as First Lady, though her priority has always been her son, Barron.
You've been down to Mar-a-Lago. I mean, I think we're all enduringly fascinated by the scene down there.
It is fascinating.
Which kind of feels like, I mean, we're watching it now. Like this is a king's or an emperor's, whichever way you want to put it, kind of court, isn't it? That's what it looks like from the outside. What's it like to be down at Mar-a-Lago, witnessing all this play out?
Well, first of all,
we might have to hold that.
Let me hold right here.
Armed Forces Chorus and America's tenor, Christopher D. Macchio.
Oh, let me tell you about him. He was by the way, I met him at Mar-a-Lago when I was there last.
Yes.
Christopher Macchio is an opera singer who performed at a restaurant, and Donald Trump encountered him and thought he had a beautiful voice. And now he's considered the president's opera singer and travels around with the president performing.
Okay.
I think we'll see a key role for him at the State Department as well.
Okay, let's hear what his voice gives.
I can hear you calling me. You are calling me to pay true to thee, true to thee. I will be. Oh, America, no weeping. Let there be no wounded heart. I will keep you in my keeping till there'll be
And of course, the president.
Well, as Mr. Trump's opera singer continues singing, he's got a magnificent voice,
Doesn't he?
that is sure. Here we have still President Biden, not for very much longer, for a matter of minutes really, and Vice President Harris. My Lord, what must she be thinking today? It could have been her. Donald Trump may have said he won a huge victory. In fact, it was a pretty narrow victory in the popular vote, a convincing one, and a convincing one in the Electoral College, but pretty close nevertheless. And, clearly, I guess historians, Robert, will be thinking, well, if Joe Biden stepped down earlier, if Vice President Harris had had a bit more of a run, would it have been different? Perhaps not.
I think that's true. Joe Biden is leaving at his lowest possible point here with a 38% approval rating only, and the prospect of his legacy being dismantled in these blizzard of executive orders we're expecting in the next few hours. So a very difficult legacy for Joe Biden as he leaves the White House. A lot of his own party feel betrayed that he didn't step aside and pass the torch to a younger generation at an earlier stage in his first term. So a betrayal from within the party, a sense of betrayal from within the party, and his legacy, I think, very much in jeopardy.
Well, it didn't have to be that way.
Right.
It did not have to be that way. He could have stepped down, but many in his family were encouraging him to stay on, even though there have been a series of reports about how his staff did much of the work on his behalf and took actions that perhaps should have been the president's. So he really has not been running the country the way a president should be running the country.
Well, you just saw the bearded J.D. Vance walking down towards the rotunda there. Of course, the incoming vice president. Very soon he will be the vice president. I mean, people often say being vice president is one of the worst jobs in America, isn't it? Like, you're there, you may be on the ticket, depending on who the president is and how...
Little arm candy, in a sense, yes.
Right, but like, it's not always perceived to be the greatest job, is it? And yet J.D. Vance, because this is Trump's last term, feels very different, right? He's clearly going to want to be the candidate next time. There will be a lot of focus on J.D. Vance in the next 4 years.
There sure will. I'll be watching to see what portfolios he's given at the White House. Just as though Harris was given the border and the issues stemming from illegal migration, I wonder what J.D. Vance will be given.
Yeah, we just obviously, that was Speaker Mike Johnson, obviously a key, you were seeing with the glasses at the back there, a key figure for Donald Trump if he wants to get any of his legislation through the House. And a Trump loyalist, it's fair to say.
That's true, for sure. Just a thought about J.D. Vance and the vice presidency. It's only as we see the president-elect here. What a triumph, what validation for him, given where he might have been after all the trials and Jack Smith, the special counsel, trying to put him behind bars, now walking through to the rotunda.
I mean, in all of American history, this is still quite a story, isn't
It's
it? Even with the comparisons of many other remarkable stories, this is a comeback for the ages.
It's an incredible triumph. It truly, truly is. And there's Melania right there. Many women, you haven't asked about this yet, but many women like to know who someone is wearing, meaning the designer.
Yeah.
First ladies here in the United States tend to wear Oscar de la Renta. So I have to confirm that that's Oscar de la Renta, but that's often what we wear. Our ladies want to know.
Melania and her son, she was very careful, clearly, to protect him in the first term. It's why she wasn't in the White House, or why she said she wasn't in the White House quite a lot of the time.
And a few of the others, just to point out, that you see behind Melania and Barron. You see Doug Burgum over Barron's shoulder. He will be the Secretary of the Interior. Brooke Rollins, who ran America First Policy Institute, an organization that will get a lot of coverage. She's set to be Ag Secretary. And then to her right, that's Howard Lutnick, our Commerce Secretary, will play a key role in sanctions and other matters coming out of the U.S. government.
Elon Musk on the left of frame there. I mean, there's a lot of speculation about how well those two men are going to get along, Donald Trump and Elon Musk. Let's just watch the president-elect walk in now.
Inaugural ceremonies, the Honorable Deb Fischer, House Democratic Leader, the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries, and Senate Majority Secretary, the Honorable Robert Duncan. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, the Honorable Joseph R. Biden Jr., and Vice President of the United States, the Honorable Kamala Devi Harris. Ladies and gentlemen, escorting the Vice President-elect, the Executive Director for the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, Mr. Michael Wagner, Senate Deputy Sergeant-at-Arms and Doorkeeper, Jason Bell, and House Deputy Sergeant-at-Arms, Mr. Sean Keating. Ladies and gentlemen, the Vice President-elect of the United States, the Honorable J.D. Vance. Ladies and gentlemen, escorting the President-elect, the Staff Director for the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, Elizabeth Farah, House Sergeant-at-Arms, the Honorable William P. McFarland, Senate Sergeant-at-Arms and Doorkeeper, the Honorable Jennifer A. Hemingway, Senate Majority Leader, the Honorable John Thune, and the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, House Democratic Leader, the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries, House Majority Leader, the Honorable Steve Scalise, Speaker of the House of Representatives, the Honorable Mike Johnson, Senate Democratic Leader, the Honorable Charles E. Schumer, Ranking Member of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, the Honorable Deb Fischer, and Chairwoman of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, the Honorable Amy Klobuchar. Ladies and gentlemen, the President-elect of the United States, the Honorable Donald John Trump. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Please welcome the Chairwoman of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, the Honorable Amy Klobuchar.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 60th presidential inauguration. Today, President-elect Trump and Vice President-elect Vance will take their oaths of office, and we will witness the peaceful transfer of power at the heart of our democracy. For the past year, I've chaired the inaugural ceremony committee, which includes the leadership of Congress from both parties. We thank the committee and Capitol staff and law enforcement who worked so hard over the last year, and especially the last 3 days. You've done a beautiful job, and you have shown grace under pressure. Our theme this year is our enduring democracy. The presence of so many presidents and vice presidents here today is truly a testament to that endurance. We welcome President Biden and Dr. Biden. We welcome Vice President Harris and Doug Emhoff, President Obama, President Clinton and Secretary Clinton, President Bush and Laura Bush, Vice President Pence, Vice President Quayle and Marilyn Quayle. The justices of the United States Supreme Court are with us, all 9 of them I counted, and of course the Trump and Vance families. This ceremony marks what will soon be 250 years of our democracy. It is the moment when leaders, elevated by the will of the people, promise to be faithful to our Constitution, to cherish and defend it. It is the moment when they become, as we all should be, the guardians of our country. Through war and peace, through adversity and prosperity, we hold this inauguration every 4 years, and today it falls on Martin Luther King Day, a further reminder that we must strive to uphold the values enshrined in our Constitution, the freedoms, the liberties, and, as is inscribed on the entrance of the United States Supreme Court, equal justice under law. But what makes this moment more than a passing ceremony is all who are watching it across the country, the people of this nation, the ordinary people doing extraordinary things. President Kennedy, who at one point worked as a senator in this building and would often walk through this very rotunda, once said, "In a democracy, every citizen, regardless of interest in politics, holds office. Every one of us is in a position of responsibility." With that responsibility of citizenship comes an obligation not to seek out malice, as President Lincoln once reminded us, but to view others with a generosity of spirit despite our differences. With that responsibility of leadership comes an obligation to stand our ground when we must and find common ground when we can. With everything swirling around us, the hot mess of division, it is on all of us, to quote an incredible songwriter who just happened to be born in my state, to ensure that our nation's democracy is our shelter from the storm. There's a reason this ceremony takes place at the Capitol. In other countries, it might be in a presidential palace or a gilded executive office building. Here it is traditionally held at the Capitol, the People's House. It is a fitting reminder of the system of checks and balances that is the very foundation of our government, 3 equal branches of government. That is how, for nearly 250 years, our great American experiment, grounded in the rule of law, has endured. So, as we inaugurate a new president and vice president, let us remember that the power of those in this room comes from the people. The construction workers who build our country, the teachers and healthcare workers who nurture us, the troops defending our freedoms, and yes, the firefighters in Los Angeles putting themselves on the line for us. Our democracy's strength and grit must match theirs. May God bless our nation. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Endurance through the years is the ultimate test. To persevere through time is the truest measure of an idea, of an institution, and a nation. Our founders wrote the Constitution so that America could withstand all the twists and turns of time. They wrote it to guide us and to preserve forever our right of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But as much as the truths and principles enshrined in our Constitution remain the same, our democracy promises the American people the power to change, to chart their own destiny. That's the beauty. That is the importance of democracy. It allows the endurance, the permanence of a nation through change. It allows nations like our United States both to avoid the obstacles and to seize the opportunities God has placed before us, all while staying true to our founding principles. Today is our country's 60th inauguration ceremony. Like all the others before it, it is a celebration of our right to set our uniquely American course. The past several years have been trying at times for many, many Americans, and also for the nations of the free world that we humbly strive to lead. In November, Americans chose again to steer this nation towards greatness, the secure, safe, and prosperous future that our founders envisioned for all of us. And today, we celebrate not only their decision to do so, but also the simple right and wisdom of a free people to make their own choice so that their nation might endure. And now, allow me to welcome Archbishop Timothy Dolan and Reverend Franklin Graham, who will deliver our invocation. Please rise.
Be still and know that I am God, supreme among the nations, supreme on the earth. Let us pray. Remembering General George Washington on his knees at Valley Forge, recalling Abraham Lincoln at his second inaugural, with malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right. Remembering General George Patton's instructions to his soldiers as they began the Battle of the Bulge 8 decades ago. Pray. Pray when fighting. Pray alone. Pray with others. Pray by night. Pray by day. Observing the birthday of the Reverend Martin Luther King, who warned, without God, our efforts turn to ashes. We, blessed citizens of this one nation under God, humbled by our claim that in God we trust, gather indeed this Inauguration Day to pray for our President Donald J. Trump, his family, his advisors, his cabinet, his aspirations, his vice president, for the Lord's blessings upon Joseph Biden, for our men and women in uniform, for each other whose hopes are stoked this new year, this Inauguration Day. We cannot err in relying upon that prayer from the Bible, upon which our president will soon place his hand in oath, as we make our own the supplications of King Solomon for wisdom as he began his governance. God of our fathers, in your wisdom you set man to govern your creatures, to govern in holiness and justice, to render justice with integrity. Give our leader wisdom, for he is your servant, aware of his own weakness and brevity of life. If wisdom which comes not from you be not with him, he shall be held in no esteem. Send wisdom from heavens that she may be with him, that he may know your designs. Please, God, bless America. Please, mend her every flaw. You are the God in whom we trust, who lives and reigns forever and ever. Amen.
Mr. President, the last 4 years, there are times I'm sure you thought it was pretty dark. But look what God has done. We praise him and give him glory. Let us pray. Our Father and our God, thou hast said, blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. As the prophet Daniel prayed, blessed be the name of God forever and ever. For wisdom and might are his. He changes the times and the seasons. He removes kings. He raises up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. Our Father, today, as President Donald J. Trump takes the oath of office once again, we come to say thank you, O Lord our God. Father, when Donald Trump's enemies thought he was down and out, you and you alone saved his life and raised him up with strength and power by your mighty hand. We pray for President Trump that you'll watch over, protect, guide, direct him. Give him your wisdom from your throne on high. We ask that you would bless him and that our nation would be blessed through him. We also ask that you would bless and protect Melania as First Lady. We thank you for the beauty, the warmth, and grace that she shows not only to this nation, but to the whole world. We thank you for Vice President-elect J.D. Vance and his wife Usha and their young family. May he be a strength to President Trump, to stand beside him, to hold up his arms like Aaron held up the arms of Moses in the midst of battle. The prophet Samuel reminded the people, it was you that brought them up from the land of Egypt. And he said, now stand still, that I may reason with you before the Lord. So, Father, we take this moment to stand still, to remember the great things that you have done for this nation. Thank you for the protection, the bounty, the freedoms that we so enjoy. We remember to keep our eyes fixed on you, and may our hearts be inclined to your voice. We know that America can never be great again if we turn our backs on you. We ask for your help, and we pray all of this in the name of the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, your Son, my Savior, and our Redeemer, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Associate Justice Kavanaugh to administer the Vice Presidential Oath of Office.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, James David Vance, do solemnly swear.
I, James David Vance, do solemnly swear.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith.
That I will bear true faith.
And allegiance to the same.
And allegiance to the same.
That I take this obligation freely.
That I take this obligation freely.
Without any mental reservation.
Without any mental reservation.
Or purpose of evasion.
Or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge.
The duties of the office.
The duties of the office.
On which I am about to enter.
On which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. Vice President.
Please welcome Chief Justice Roberts to administer the presidential oath of office.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute.
That I will faithfully execute.
The office of President of the United States.
The office of President of the United States.
And will, to the best of my ability.
And will, to the best of my ability.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
is my honor and pleasure to introduce to you the 45th and the 47th President of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump.
Thank you very much, everybody. Well, thank you very, very much. Vice President Vance, Speaker Johnson, Senator Thune, Chief Justice Roberts, Justices of the United States Supreme Court, President Clinton, President Bush, President Obama, President Biden, Vice President Harris, and my fellow citizens. The golden age of America begins right now. From this day forward, our country will flourish and be respected again all over the world. We will be the envy of every nation, and we will not allow ourselves to be taken advantage of any longer. During every single day of the Trump administration, I will very simply put America first. Our sovereignty will be reclaimed. Our safety will be restored. The scales of justice will be rebalanced. The vicious, violent, and unfair weaponization of the Justice Department and our government will end. And our top priority will be to create a nation that is proud, prosperous, and free. America will soon be greater, stronger, and far more exceptional than ever before. I return to the presidency confident and optimistic that we are at the start of a thrilling new era of national success. A tide of change is sweeping the country, sunlight is pouring over the entire world, and America has the chance to seize this opportunity like never before. But first, we must be honest about the challenges we face. While they are plentiful, they will be annihilated by this great momentum that the world is now witnessing in the United States of America. As we gather today, our government confronts a crisis of trust. For many years, a radical and corrupt establishment has extracted power and wealth from our citizens while the pillars of our society lay broken and seemingly in complete disrepair. We now have a government that cannot manage even a simple crisis at home, while at the same time stumbling into a continuing catalog of catastrophic events abroad. It fails to protect our magnificent, law-abiding American citizens, but provides sanctuary and protection for dangerous criminals, many from prisons and mental institutions that have illegally entered our country from all over the world. We have a government that has given unlimited funding to the defense of foreign borders, but refuses to defend American borders or, more importantly, its own people. Our country can no longer deliver basic services in times of emergency, as recently shown by the wonderful people of North Carolina, been treated so badly. And other states who are still suffering from a hurricane that took place many months ago. Or more recently, Los Angeles, where we're watching fires still tragically burn. From weeks ago, without even a token of defense, They're raging through the houses and communities, even affecting some of the wealthiest and most powerful individuals in our country, some of whom are sitting here right now. They don't have a home any longer. That's interesting. But we can't let this happen. Everyone is unable to do anything about it. That's going to change. We have a public health system that does not deliver in times of disaster, yet more money is spent on it than any country anywhere in the world. And we have an education system that teaches our children to be ashamed of themselves in many cases, to hate our country despite the love that we try so desperately to provide to them. All of this will change starting today, and it will change very quickly. My recent election is a mandate to completely and totally reverse a horrible betrayal and all of these many betrayals that have taken place, and to give the people back their faith, their wealth, their democracy, and indeed their freedom. From this moment on, America's decline is over. Our liberties and our nation's glorious destiny will no longer be denied, and we will immediately restore the integrity, competency, and loyalty of America's government. Over the past 8 years, I have been tested and challenged more than any president in our 250-year history, and I've learned a lot along the way. The journey to reclaim our republic has not been an easy one, that I can tell you. Those who wish to stop our cause have tried to take my freedom and indeed to take my life. Just a few months ago in a beautiful Pennsylvania field, an assassin's bullet ripped through my ear. But I felt then, and believe even more so now, that my life was saved for a reason. I was saved by God to make America great again. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. That is why each day under our administration of American patriots, we will be working to meet every crisis with dignity and power and strength. We will move with purpose and speed to bring back hope, prosperity, safety, and peace for citizens of every race, religion, color, and creed. For American citizens, January 20th, 2025 is Liberation Day. It is my hope that our recent presidential election will be remembered as the greatest and most consequential election in the history of our country. As our victory showed, the entire nation is rapidly unifying behind our agenda with dramatic increases in support from virtually every element of our society, young and old, men and women, African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, urban, suburban, rural. And very importantly, we had a powerful win in all 7 swing states. And the popular vote, we won by millions of people. To the Black and Hispanic communities, I want to thank you for the tremendous outpouring of love and trust that you have shown me with your vote. We set records, and I will not forget it. I've heard your voices in the campaign, and I look forward to working with you in the years to come. Today is Martin Luther King Day, and his honor, this will be a great honor, but in his honor we will strive together to make his dream a reality. We will make his dream come true. Thank you. Thank you. National unity is now returning to America, and confidence and pride is soaring like never before. In everything we do, my administration will be inspired by a strong pursuit of excellence and unrelenting success. We will not forget our country. We will not forget our Constitution, and we will not forget our God. Can't do that. Today, I will sign a series of historic executive orders. With these actions, we will begin the complete restoration of America and the revolution of common sense. It's all about common sense. First, I will declare a national emergency at our southern border. All illegal entry will immediately be halted, and we will begin the process of returning millions and millions of criminal aliens back to the places from which they came. We will reinstate my Remain in Mexico policy. I will end the practice of catch and release. And I will send troops to the southern border to repel the disastrous invasion of our country. Under the orders I signed today, we will also be designating the cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. And by invoking the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, I will direct our government to use the full and immense power of federal and state law enforcement to eliminate the presence of all foreign gangs and criminal networks, bringing devastating crime to U.S. soil, including our cities and inner cities. As Commander-in-Chief, I have no higher responsibility than to defend our country from threats and invasions, and that is exactly what I am going to do. We will do it at a level that nobody's ever seen before. Next, I will direct all members of my cabinet to marshal the vast powers at their disposal to defeat what was record inflation and rapidly bring down costs and prices. The inflation crisis was caused by massive overspending and escalating energy prices, and that is why today I will also declare a national energy emergency. We will drill, baby, drill. America will be a manufacturing nation once again, and we have something that no other manufacturing nation will ever have, the largest amount of oil and gas of any country on earth, and we are going to use it. Let me use it. We will bring prices down, fill our strategic reserves up again, right to the top, and export American energy all over the world. We will be a rich nation again, and it is that liquid gold under our feet that will help to do it. With my actions today, we will end the Green New Deal and we will revoke the electric vehicle mandate, saving our auto industry and keeping my sacred pledge to our great American auto workers. In other words, you'll be able to buy the car of your choice. We will build automobiles in America again at a rate that nobody could have dreamt possible just a few years ago. And thank you to the auto workers of our nation for your inspiring vote of confidence. We did tremendously with their vote. I will immediately begin the overhaul of our trade system to protect American workers and families. Instead of taxing our citizens to enrich other countries, we will tariff and tax foreign countries to enrich our citizens. For this purpose, we are establishing the External Revenue Service to collect all tariffs, duties, and revenues. It will be massive amounts of money pouring into our treasury, coming from foreign sources. The American dream will soon be back and thriving like never before to restore competence and effectiveness to our federal government. My administration will establish the brand new Department of Government Efficiency. After years and years of illegal and unconstitutional federal efforts to restrict free expression, I will also sign an executive order to immediately stop all government censorship and bring back free speech to America. Never again will the immense power of the state be weaponized to persecute political opponents, something I know something about. We will not allow that to happen. It will not happen again. Under my leadership, we will restore fair, equal, and impartial justice under the constitutional rule of law. And we are going to bring law and order back to our cities. This week, I will also end the government policy of trying to socially engineer race and gender into every aspect of public and private life. We will forge a society that is colorblind and merit-based. As of today, it will henceforth be the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, male and female. This week, I will reinstate any service members who were unjustly expelled from our military for objecting to the COVID vaccine mandate with full back pay. And I will sign an order to stop our warriors from being subjected to radical political theories and social experiments while on duty. It's going to end immediately. Our armed forces will be freed to focus on their sole mission, defeating America's enemies. Like in 2017, we will again build the strongest military the world has ever seen. We will measure our success not only by the battles we win, but also by the wars that we end, and perhaps most importantly, the wars we never get into. My proudest legacy will be that of a peacemaker and unifier. That's what I want to be, a peacemaker and a unifier. I'm pleased to say that as of yesterday, one day before I assumed office, the hostages in the Middle East are coming back home to their families. Thank you. America will reclaim its rightful place as the greatest, most powerful, most respected nation on earth, inspiring the awe and admiration of the entire world. A short time from now, we are going to be changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, and we will restore the name of a great president, William McKinley, to Mount McKinley, where it should be and where it belongs. President McKinley made our country very rich through tariffs and through talent. He was a natural businessman and gave Teddy Roosevelt the money for many of the great things he did, including the Panama Canal, which has foolishly been given to the country of Panama after the United States. The United States, I mean, think of this, spent more money than ever spent on a project before and lost 38,000 lives in the building of the Panama Canal. We have been treated very badly from this foolish gift that should have never been made, and Panama's promise to us has been broken. The purpose of our deal and the spirit of our treaty has been totally violated. American ships are being severely overcharged and not treated fairly in any way, shape, or form, and that includes the United States Navy. And above all, China is operating the Panama Canal, and we didn't give it to China, we gave it to Panama, and we're taking it back. Above all, my message to Americans today is that it is time for us to once again act with courage, vigor, and the vitality of history's greatest civilization. So as we liberate our nation, we will lead it to new heights of victory and success. We will not be deterred. Together we will end the chronic disease epidemic and keep our children safe, healthy, and disease-free. The United States will once again consider itself a growing nation, one that increases our wealth, expands our territory, builds our cities, raises our expectations, and carries our flag into new and beautiful horizons. and we will pursue our manifest destiny into the stars, launching American astronauts to plant the stars and stripes on the planet Mars. Ambition is the lifeblood of a great nation, and right now our nation is more ambitious than any other. There's no nation like our nation. Americans are explorers, builders, innovators, entrepreneurs, and pioneers. The spirit of the frontier is written into our hearts. The call of the next great adventure resounds from within our souls. Our American ancestors turned a small group of colonies on the edge of a vast continent into a mighty republic of the most extraordinary citizens on earth. No one comes close. Americans pushed thousands of miles through a rugged land of untamed wilderness. They crossed deserts, scaled mountains, braved untold dangers, won the Wild West, ended slavery, rescued millions from tyranny, lifted billions from poverty, harnessed electricity, split the atom, launched mankind into the heavens, and put the universe of human knowledge into the palm of the human hand. If we work together, there is nothing we cannot do and no dream we cannot achieve. Many people thought it was impossible for me to stage such a historic political comeback. But as you see today, here I am. The American people have spoken. I stand before you now as proof that you should never believe that something is impossible to do. In America, the impossible is what we do best. From New York to Los Angeles, from Philadelphia to Phoenix, from Chicago to Miami, from Houston to right here in Washington, D.C., our country was forged and built by the generations of patriots who gave everything they had for our rights and for our freedom. They were farmers and soldiers, cowboys and factory workers, steel workers and coal miners, police officers and pioneers who pushed onward, marched forward, and let no obstacle defeat their spirit or their pride. Together they laid down the railroads, raised up the skyscrapers, built great highways, won 2 world wars, defeated fascism and communism, and triumphed over every single challenge that they faced. After all we have been through together, we stand on the verge of the 4 greatest years in American history. With your help, we will restore America promise, and we will rebuild the nation that we love, and we love it so much. We are one people, one family, and one glorious nation under God. So to every parent who dreams for their child, and every child who dreams for their future, I am with you, I will fight for you, and I will win for you. We are going to win like never before. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. In recent years, our nation has suffered greatly, but we are going to bring it back and make it great again, greater than ever before. We will be a nation like no other, full of compassion, courage, and exceptionalism. Our power will stop all wars and bring a new spirit of unity to a world that has been angry, violent, and totally unpredictable. America will be respected again and admired again, including by people of religion, faith, and goodwill, we will be prosperous, we will be proud, we will be strong, and we will win like never before. We will not be conquered, we will not be intimidated, we will not be broken, and we will not fail. From this day on, the United States of America will be a free, sovereign, and independent nation. We will stand bravely, we will live proudly, we will dream boldly, and nothing will stand in our way because we are Americans. The future is ours, and our golden age has just begun. Thank you. God bless America. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, performing America the Beautiful, please welcome the Armed Forces Chorus and Carrie Underwood.
Okay, there we are, Donald Trump's inauguration address as 47th president. Some things we expected. National emergency, potentially troops to the southern border, supposing Congress agrees with that, but also some language that we were briefed to expect but didn't necessarily think we'd get. He said he wanted to be a peacemaker and a unifier. That's certainly very strikingly different from the tone of his first inauguration address. Some interesting things in there, renaming the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. I would suggest that's a tank trap for every other Democratic leader in the world who will no doubt be asked tomorrow whether they're going to reprint their maps to say the same thing. So I look forward to hearing what Keir Starmer's got to say about that. That's rather tricky, and Elon Musk beaming when he said there were going to be the stars and stripes on Mars. Heather and Robert, what did you make of it?
I frankly love it. Stars and stripes on Mars, nothing better. President Trump talking about peacemaker, unifier, calling today Liberation Day, talking about how the unfair weaponization of our justice system will now come to an end. And then, of course, thanking the broad-based coalition of voters, African Americans, Latinos, and others who voted for him in record numbers for a Republican.
I mean, I was just struck by the look at Joe Biden's face, Kamala Harris's face.
Kamala Harris had a face like thunder, I think it is fair to say.
I think she felt, I mean, just furious, frankly, when he spoke about the radical and corrupt establishment, catastrophic events abroad. You know, this is about dismantling the entire Biden-Harris agenda. And then when he talks about taking Panama back, I mean, what does that mean? Is he meaning, Heather, militarily? Is he talking about diplomatically? I mean, that's pretty bizarre and strident language.
Well, I think it makes sense. China basically administers the Panama Canal. China tries to seize all of our intelligence. When I went with Secretary Pompeo to visit Panama
it doesn't administer the canal. It owns ports either side.
Yes, exactly. Well, yes, that's what I mean. So I think we'll try to reposition things economically. Let's listen to Carrie Underwood, very popular, very popular country singer.
Let's hear a bit of this, and then we'll pick up on some of that.
For purple mountain majesties above the fruited plain, America, God shed his grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea.
Carrie Underwood there singing America the Beautiful. Look, there's so much in that speech that we probably do need to put on. But can we just finish the point about the Panama Canal? Because Donald Trump has refused to rule out using military force. We can debate how seriously he takes it, but this is a kind of sovereign matter for Panama, right? This is the point about these pronouncements, is it involves another country in its sovereignty. You know, how do we think they're going to react?
Probably not very well. They're not going to like that. And you're right, it is a sovereignty issue, but America sees it, or the Trump administration sees that as a national security issue. If China could potentially shut down the Panama Canal after China perhaps invades Taiwan. So that's a real concern. And I know that the United States would prefer to have American companies overseeing the canal, having ports along the canal. These are conversations that we had with the Panamanian government several years ago when I was still at the State Department.
Okay, one other thing I wanted to make a point about is he talked about ending, Robert, the weaponization of the justice system. Now, you can interpret that various ways. Is he merely talking about he wants to make sure that, Heather, you want to get in?
No, go ahead.
Okay, he made it clear that he was going to, as I said, end the weaponization of the justice system. Now, on one level, that could just mean he's, going to make sure it doesn't come after him or any of his allies. But we've seen this morning Joe Biden, the outgoing president, issuing preemptive pardons on the likes of General Mark Milley, the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, most senior military officer in America, and various others. Do we think Donald Trump is signaling, no, he really is not going to go after his enemies here, or is that not what he's signaling?
Well, apart from the sort of pardons that he signed yesterday and that were announced this morning, in the last few minutes, just before he was sworn in, President Biden, in his last few seconds as president, actually signed 5 more pardons for members of his own family. So that tells you where Joe Biden thinks the Trump agenda is. He does fear a policy of retribution and vengeance from Donald Trump. We will see how that plays out in the Department of Justice and the FBI. But certainly, look, Harris and Biden fear that Trump is coming after them and their families and those in their orbit, and that's why there is this sort of preemptive flurry of pardons.
But do you think that was him signaling that he's not going to do that, or is that an overread of what he was saying there?
I think it's an overread. I think, it was a fairly, in that moment, forgive me for saying this, Heather, this was a moment of a little bit of narcissism. He has a sense of mission. As he put it himself, he said, my life was saved for a reason in that field in Pennsylvania. I was saved by God to make America great again. So I think he's reflecting his own court cases, his own, what he regards as the weaponization of the Department of Justice against him. I think that's the point he's making.
Okay, let's pick up on that in a second, but the president promised the largest deportation of illegal immigrants in US history, and that's expected to start in the coming hours once he returns to the White House and begins to sign a series of executive orders. Our reporter Sejal Karia is in a town in Arizona, right on the border with Mexico. Sejal, I mean, look, we expected him to take action immediately on immigration. There's some suggestion he may start signing executive orders actually in the Rotunda building or even in the car on his way back to the White House. But whatever, he's very clearly signaled he's going to take action. What do you expect that to look like in reality?
Well, I think it's going to be an interesting prospect for people that are wanting to come into America. I mean, if you join me right on the border of the US and Mexico, you might be able to see the wall just behind me, and it is just snaking into the distance there, into the hill. I've been speaking to lots and lots of migrants here over the past few days. I even crossed over into Mexico at an official crossing point just about a mile down the road, and a lot of them told me that it will not deter them from coming into the US just because Donald Trump has taken power. Yes, they were very scared, but it's not going to stop them. And it looks like, as you are saying, that Donald Trump is wasting no time in enacting those promises that he made during the election campaign to crack down on immigration. As you've been hearing, he's declared a national emergency on the US, Mexico, just behind me here, and that's going to allow him to deploy troops here and seal the border, as White House officials have said. But the chances are that he will be subject to many logistical, financial and legal challenges.
Okay, Sejal, thank you very much indeed. Well, can I bring that issue back in here? Because he was, as I said, very, very clearly signaling immediate action on immigration. What do we think, Heather, that's going to mean, and what isn't it going to mean?
Well, interesting. I've talked to some sheriffs in some small towns across the country who have said to me, day one, we are going to start knocking on doors. We know these criminals live, and we are going to take them into, basically arrest them and round them up. Now, they're talking about the most serious of criminals, not just everyday people who maybe illegally cross the border and are living in the United States, but rather the criminals, gangs in the United States, including some very racist gangs. Trendy Argo is one of them, for example, we hear a lot about in the United States. And now Trump just announced today that they will be considered, the cartels will be considered in gangs a foreign terrorist organization, and that's a significant development.
Robert, he said that he was going to declare a national emergency and deploy federal troops to the southern border. Possibly easier said than done. He needs the House's approval to do that, but you think he'll get...
Well, I think he's going to pass some executive orders that mandate, for example, the US military to participate in building more of the wall to extend security protocols all along the southern border. So I think that'll happen. He certainly will. These executive orders are going to give additional to law enforcement to make sweeping arrests of illegal migrants in this country and then to deport them. So I think all of those probably lie in the executive orders he's going to sign in the coming minutes. So he's not going to waste any time. He may even sign them, in the Capitol before he leaves. He might sign more in front of a crowd at the Capitol Arena, that sports arena where he's going to be talking in a short while. He may sign another flurry back in the Oval Office when he arrives there. So look, we're being told between 100 and 200 executive orders might be signed by the end of the day. That gives you this sense of, we were talking about this last night on News at 10, about the shock and awe strategy. He wants to be seen to be the president who isn't talking, but he's acting.
It's Martin Luther King Jr. Day here today. We're just hearing his very, very famous and evocative words being spoken there, but that's why particularly you were hearing those today as part of this ceremony. Look, we've talked, haven't we, about how different this feels, and it did feel different. And I'm always struck when I come here how different it is from any even vaguely comparable ceremony. Obviously in the UK the Prime Minister isn't the head of state, so it's a totally different thing. But what you get when you come into Washington on days like this is just this absolutely forcible reminder of how powerful America is, of how powerful the presidency is, everything that you see and everything that you witness here reminds you of that fact. And as we've said, the whole world is watching to work out how they're going to respond to this man as president second time around and what it's going to mean. It was a little bit different, I thought, from the first inauguration address. But in that sense, did it give us any clear direction of travel here, of what to expect or not?
I think we're clearly seeing a peaceful transition of power. And that's something that a lot of folks around the world may not realize, may not recognize, thinking that there's so much animosity between the incoming administration and the outgoing administration. And that's not totally the case. Of course, in political terms, there is animosity, but in terms of working together for this transition, it's taking place seamlessly behind the scenes. We're also going to see it in just a bit, Joe Biden and Dr. Jill Biden kind of quietly departing the U.S. Capitol, and that's when they go on to their life, just their regular civilian life, not made a big deal, but that's kind of goes out quietly.
Well, not so quietly, because of course there's a helicopter
On
parked
the
last time it came past,
but they are not intended to get a lot of attention, and then they will typically depart on a helicopter.
And it's brutal, that transference of power, isn't it? You go from being the most powerful man in the world, you get in a helicopter, off you go, and it's all over.
Well, let's think about it. Last night, they spent the night in the White House, their final evening in the White House. And if we drove past the White House right now, we would probably still see moving vans out front. So that's how quickly it happens. Change the sheets. What do they call it in the military? A hot bed? A hot rack?
Hot bunking.
Hot cot. There we go. There we go. A little bit of a hot cot at the White House.
But I think back to election night. Here we were, same studio, sitting here, didn't know the result, and as we went on, it was pretty clear that Trump was going to win and that something really big was changing. But we talked that night about the things that, some of his staff, about Mark Milley and General Kelly had said about him, that he had dictatorial tendencies and all the rest of it. Do either of you, today has been so extraordinary in so many ways. The comeback, the power, it's just been really something to witness. Do you have any worries about what that's going to mean in reality?
Well, I think we have to watch how he works with the House of Representatives and also the Senate. So, and of course, Republicans control both chambers, not by much, very slim margins. So on some key pieces of legislation, it will require bipartisan cooperation. But you already see a bit of a hand that President Trump, President-elect Trump, is playing in this right now, where he's encouraging staffing changes at the highest level, committee assignments and other things. And so I think we may see a little bit of someone lording over a bit.
Robert, final thought to you.
Yeah, I think my final thought is, you know, what are the guardrails here now? Is it a kind of a legacy media that feels weakened and is now more deferential to Donald Trump? Is it the court system? Is it those advisors around him who might stand up to him? So, you know, these are all open questions, and that's why the next 4 years covering America is going to be, you know, an extraordinary adventure. We cannot know how this turns out, but it will be quite a spectacle, because we've seen here today this merging of this kind of great pageantry with this kind of, as I said earlier, this sort of apex of political power, where he said, you know, so sort of in such grandiose language, America's decline is over at this moment. The challenges are going to be annihilated. I mean, that sets the bar extraordinarily high.
That is pretty much all we have time for. Coverage continues on our website. We have the regional news next. Mary will have much more analysis in the evening news after that, and I will be back right here for News at 10. But thank you for watching.
Honorable Donald John Trump.
I was saved by God to make America great again.
Happy birthday, Grandad.
Thank you, darling.